Good afternoon. Our Bible study is coming from the book of Luke, chapter 3. We're continuing with John coming out of the wilderness, preparing a way for Jesus. And our verses are 11 through 20, but we're continuing with the question, that was presented to John when they asked in verse 10, what should we do then? The crowd asked. So, with that being said, verse 11 through 20 reads as follows. John answered, anyone who has two shirts should share the one who has none, and anyone who has food should do the same. Even tax collectors came to be baptized. Teacher, they asked, what should we do? Don't collect any more than you are required to, he told them. Then some soldiers asked him, and what should we do? He replied, don't extort money and don't accuse people falsely. Be content with your pay. The people were waiting expectantly and were all wondering in their hearts if John might possibly be the Messiah. John answered them all, I baptize you with water, but one who is more powerful than I will come, the straps of whose sandals I am not worthy to untie. He will baptize you with the Holy Spirit and fire. His winnowing fork is in his hand to clear his threshing floor and to gather the wheat into the barn, his barn. But he will burn up the chaff with the unquenchable fire. And with many other words, John exhorted the people and proclaimed the good news to them. But when John rebuked Herod the Tetrarch because of his marriage to Herodias, his brother's wife, and all the other evil things he had done, Herod added this to them all. He locked John up in prison. Well, let's start it out. John answered the question that was really a question from verse 10, but he's answered in verse 11 when they said, what should we do then? The crowd asked. The crowd was asking, what should they do then because of what he had stated to him earlier about the tree being cut down and being thrown into the fire, because they were worried. What do we do not to have this happen to us? And John answered, anyone who has two shirts should share with one who has none. And anyone who has food should do the same. John is saying, be kind. Love somebody else. Be willing to give to those who don't have. Be willing to give to those that are in need. Because anyone who has two shirts has an extra shirt. And one who doesn't have one has none. So that extra isn't a necessity for the one who has extra. But for the person who doesn't have a shirt, it is a necessity. It is that love, that sharing, and that caring that you extend to your brother or your sister. And then he speaks about, and anyone who has food should do the same. So if you see somebody hungry, you should feed them. You should care enough to make sure that they are taken care of also. You know, he is telling you all about love and giving and passion, compassion, all these things. And he's speaking it into the terms that we understand. But these are terms of things that we are not used to doing. Because in verse 12, when he says, even tax collectors came to be baptized. So, okay. And remember, tax collectors weren't that well liked. Matthew, what was he? A tax collector, and they didn't like him. And teacher, they asked him, what should we do? These are the tax collectors, the shady dudes who make their money off of getting extra. And John simply says, don't collect any more than you are required to. Why are you adding hardship to people by taking more than what is asked from them? And this got to be a hard pill to swallow, because I've been getting over the whole time. I make my living. I make my money off of extorting people and taking extra from them. And John said, don't do it. But as you listen to John talking to them, he's just preparing them for what Jesus is going to tell them. Then some soldiers asked him, and what should we do? And once again, John replied, don't extort money and don't accuse people falsely. Be content with your pay. When you look at this world right now, we could say, don't extort money. Don't accuse people falsely. We've been letting the innocent go to jail and the guilty been free. Accuse with truth in your heart to have what is truly wrong to be uncovered. We don't want the evil to stay in the world. We want to see it and fix it or correct it or help it. But John tells these soldiers right here, don't extort money. Don't go get it. Don't go push up and say, I need some money or it's gonna happen. And they had the power and ability and authority to do so. But having that power and ability and authority to do so, even if illegally, does not make it a good thing to do. You are not living a life that reflects somebody who is repentant. And he tells them that. Be content with what you have. Be content with your pay. Nothing wrong with striving to get ahead and to make more money if that's your thing, but don't do anything illegal to get more money. Verse 15, it says, the people were waiting expectantly and were all wondering in their hearts if John might possibly be the Messiah. John was speaking differently than they heard. Okay, this was new conversation to them. But John was just preparing them. He was not the Messiah. And John answered them all. And he said it in such an eloquent way, in a way that made you think. He said, I baptize you with water. But one who is more powerful than I, he's coming. The straps of whose sandals I am not worthy to untie. I am not even worthy enough to touch him. Not only is he more powerful than me and he will baptize you in something other than water, truthfully, I am not worthy to touch the straps on his sandals. I'm not. He is that much above me. And it didn't belittle John. It didn't make John less of who John was, because John was the man. But he wasn't Jesus. He wasn't the Messiah. And being a true believer in the Messiah, he knew that. Who did he pay homage to? Who did he pray to? Who answered his prayers? It wasn't John. It was the Messiah. So he knew who he was talking about. And John was strong in his strength for who he was speaking of. And then he tells them, he gonna do what I can't do. He gonna baptize you with the Holy Spirit and fire. Wow. He's gonna baptize you not with just this plain old water. He's gonna baptize you with the Holy Spirit. He is gonna give you something that I cannot give you. He is going to share something with you that will change you and that will be with you and that will guide you. I am just John the Baptist, a man. And I do his work. But he has the power. He has the ability to do these things. And the people probably were in awe about this. You know, they were like, wow, I mean, we put John on this. You know, he is who he is. But honestly, John was more or less what we would call the herald of Christ. He was his prophet. He was a disciple, but he was the pre-part. Jesus is the main dish. John was and was a great appetizer, but Jesus was the main dish. He was the main course. He is what you paid the big difference in money for. You know, your appetizer was $10.99 or $13.99, but the main course was $55. It had a lot more substance to it. It gave you more strength and vigor because it filled you up. It put something in your body that stayed with you. That's what Jesus was going to be. Jesus was going to be it, and Jesus is the main course. He was telling them what was going to happen, these things. He was going to baptize you with the Holy Spirit and fire. His winnowing fork is in his hand. Uh-oh. Winnowing. You know what winnowing is? When you're winnowing something? Wow. John was telling you his winnowing fork is in his hand. Wow. What kind of power is that? You know, he was telling you this is the one that is going to do the cutting of the wheat. He is the one that's going to do the cutting. It tells you right there, his winnowing fork is in his hand. And then if you didn't know what it was before, you can kind of figure it out because it says to clear his threshing floor and to gather the wheat into his barn. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, 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 uh-oh. First of all, it's in his hand, the power. Okay. And he was clearing his threshing floor. So he was gathering his wheat, his people, and to put them into his barn. It tells you whose barn it is. It tells you where the power is at because it's his barn. It's Christ's barn. But he will burn up. Hey, he got the ability to put it on fire too. He will burn up the chaff. You know, the one that looked like the wheat but ain't the wheat. It's just a weed hiding out in the same area trying to fake and fit in. But he knows which one is the wheat and which one is the weed. And he will burn up that chaff with an unquenchable fire. That means whatever fire extinguisher type you use, whatever amount of water you think there may be, whatever sand blast you might try to do, whatever fire department you may know, they can't put this fire out. It's going to keep going. And with many other words, John exhorted the people and claimed the good news to them. John started preaching, started telling them about Jesus, started letting it go. But when John rebuked Herod, and he did, he rebuked him, the tetrarch, because of his marriage to Herodias, his brother's wife, and that's why, his brother's wife, and all the other evil things. Hold up, he had some other things that he was doing, some evil things he had done. John was calling you out on it. So Herod got mad. He got mad and he said, I'm going to lock John up in prison. Amen.